Look, buying a piece of land is one of the most exciting things you could ever do, building that house and buying that land. But I can assure you that if you don't take the proper steps and the proper procedures and use the proper tools, it can be one of the worst things you'll ever do with your money. And look, finding a piece of property, that's the easy part. The hard part is knowing what to put in the contract, what contingencies to write in the contract, what tools to use when you're buying that piece of property. Should you survey, should you not survey? Should you get a loan? What about an appraisal? And most importantly, who to ask for all this information. But lucky you got me. It's gonna help you. So look, get your reading glasses, grab a pen and a piece of paper. You're gonna want to take some notes. This is good stuff. So the first thing you'll want to do, there's a big old raccoon. Look at that coon. There's a coon. There's a coon. Anyway, so look, the first thing you'll want to do is get an appraisal on the property. You got to make sure you don't overpay for a piece of property. If you overpay for a piece of property, you'll never forgive yourself. So simply get the property appraised. Now, if you're going to get a loan on the property, you're going to need to get it appraised anyway, because the bank's only going to loan you the appraised value or the sales price, whichever is lower. So let's say the property appraises for less than what you have it under contract for. Well, you don't have to buy the property. You're not obligated to buy the property as long as you put the proper documents in place and statements in place in the contract. You see, when you make an offer on a piece of property, you're going to put an earnest money deposit down on the property, but you're also going to put in there a few contingencies to make sure you get your deposit back. And most importantly, you're not sued for specific performance to the contract. You see, what a lot of people are not told and they're not informed of is that if you choose to not purchase the property and you've met all the contract contingencies, the seller can sue you for specific performance to the contract, and they can sue you for 10% of the sales price of the property. Plus you lose your deposit, plus real estate agents, they can sue you too. Now, the second thing that people actually miss is walking the property. Now, you would think something so simple as just walking the property, but you don't want to do it just one time. You want to do it at least twice. You want to make sure you've got a copy of the old survey, and whatever you do, get a new survey. Now, when it comes to walking the property, I say walk the property with a survey, a copy of the original survey. If it's never been surveyed, you're going to want to have it surveyed. And of course, you can always ask the seller to survey the property for you. Now, the cost to survey a property is going to vary depending on the size of the property and how thick and wooded the property is, but a good range of numbers is $700 to upwards of $5,000 or $6,000. Just depends on the size of the land. So even though you're buying a piece of property and it's going to be yours, that property can come with restrictions. That's why you always have to get a copy of the restrictive covenants to the property. That will spell what you can and can't do with the property. Now, once you become the property owner, you can create and add your own restrictions to the property, but you want to make sure that in that contract, it says that it's contingent upon you seeing and approving a copy of the deed restrictions and covenants. In other words, what you can and can't do on the property. See, the biggest thing that people don't understand is that you want to make sure that if you want to have pigs, you can have pigs. If you want to put a double wide or single wide mobile home on the property, you can do that. You want to make sure that the minimum square footage or maximum square footage that you're going to build is not restrictive when it comes to the property that you're going to buy. You need to know that before you physically close on the property. So look, I talked about a survey and walking the property. What you don't want to do is never rely on an old survey. Like, it's one thing if it's 10 or 12 years old and you can walk the property and you can see things that may be encroaching upon the property. But if you've got 7, 8, 10 acres of land or more and it's all woods and you've got a 50-year-old survey, rest assured, there's probably going to be something encroaching upon your new property. Now, some of the most common encroachments that we see on a property are fences, barns, storage buildings, and driveways. So look, the answer is quite simple. Get the property surveyed. Once you have the property surveyed, meet the surveyor out there with the property. Most surveyors will not mind if you spend a day with them. Sometimes it will take as much as a day to physically survey the property. Now, if you don't survey the property, this is what can happen. A quick story. We sold a piece of property. We represented the buyer on a piece of property. The seller had a driveway that encroached upon the neighbor's property. Wasn't a big issue, right? Until they sold the property. Now, here's the issue that we had with that property, and we had to solve that because they couldn't get clear title on the property. We were able to get clear title on the property because we had to contact the neighbor of which the driveway was encroached upon his property. And luckily, he was very kind, polite, and cordial, and he signed what we call a servitude. That's a recorded document that basically gives that driveway and that new property owner, our client, permission to be on his property. And look, that property, it was a tricky one, and here's the reason why. That property and that land, that house was 50 years old. And believe it or not, it had never been surveyed. I know that sounds crazy, but back in the day, these documents and these surveyors would literally not drive or record documents. They would just record measurements. They would say, at this tree, walk this far, and at this fence post, take 3 paces back. That's why they did it years ago. Now, that survey cost them about $2,000, but it gave them a peace of mind. They know exactly where their property line is. They know exactly what was encroached upon the property. They know exactly where fence lines are, and there's no question, no worries. You sleep good at night. Most importantly, you get a title policy on the property. Now, a quick tip on flood zones. If it's close to or roundabout or near any kind of water, you definitely want to make sure that the survey shows the flood zone. See, there's A, B, C, and X flood zones. A being the worst, B being a little bit better, C being much better, and X being basically still in a flood zone, but it's not required by the lender to have flood insurance. Now look, if you're in flood zone A, the mortgage company is going to require that you have flood insurance. And flood zone A is going to put you in what they call a 100-year floodplain. Now that does not mean that it's going to flood every 100 years. That simply means that in any given year, there's at least a 1% chance that that property that you just bought or you're going to purchase floods. So look, you've done your due diligence, you've done your survey, you've made sure there's no back taxes, liens, encumbrances, encroachments, and all of that. So you're ready to close, right? But wait, can you put a septic system on the property? Or is it going to be connected to city sewer? See, if it has to have a septic system on the property, you got to make sure that that land will perk. That means percolation. That means that the water table isn't too high or the soil doesn't have too much clay in it, so you can put an actual septic system on the property. Believe it or not, there's land that can't even have a septic system on it because the water will not absorb into the soil. And look, it's real easy to have them come out. It's real easy to look at the property. It's real easy to have a percolation test done, but it's not just for the sewer system or septic system. You got to make sure that you're actually going to have water. So are you going to connect to city water? If not, you're going to need to dig a well. You need to make sure that the covenants and restrictions to that land actually will allow you to put a well. As crazy as it may sound, you may buy a piece of property and in the fine print it says no wells are allowed on the property, but yet you don't have city water, but yet you cannot connect to city water. Makes no sense, but perhaps that's why the land was such a good deal. So look, I've been going over all this process and I hope you've been taking notes, but listen, when it comes down to it, if you need an agent, ask the proper questions. How many years have you been in the business? How many transactions have you closed? Are you familiar with doing land transactions? And if you're not comfortable with that person or you don't know of anybody, reach out to us. Simply go to contactwayne.com. I have 90,000 agents that all around the country and Canada that can help you with the process just like I'm helping you through this video. So look, when it comes to buying that piece of land, this is the most overlooked item. This is absolutely what people fail to do. They don't get out and talk to the neighbors. Before you physically close on the property, it's okay to get out and talk to the neighbors and ask them questions. What do they like most about living in the area? If they could do it all over again, would they buy the property? What is it that they wish they'd known before they bought their property? And look, you'd be surprised. You may find out that neighbor's a little crazy, or they have a feud with the other neighbor, or the kids don't like each other, or they hate the school system, or whatever it may be. But that way you have the most informed information so you can make the best judgment for you of whether or not you want to proceed forward with the property. So if you need an agent, simply go to contactwayne.com, give us a thumbs up. Most importantly, subscribe to our channel if you've enjoyed this video, and leave us a comment. Let us know your success story, or if you have any questions or concerns about purchasing your next piece of property.